36, Deputy Mary Lou McDonald, please.
Taoiseach, maternity care and health care for women has for too long been an afterthought and even taboo in this state. The roll call of victims of an aggressive religious dogma in healthcare settings is heartbreaking, and far too many Irish women have paid far too high a price. So the new National Maternity Hospital is absolutely vital for the delivery of modern, progressive healthcare for women in Ireland, and everybody wants to see this hospital built and built quickly. But we also have to get it right. Yesterday, Minister Donnelly brought a memo to Cabinet seeking the green light for the development of the hospital on the St Vincent's site. This was, I believe, a premature move, and I welcome that that decision has been paused. It is essential that the Oireachtas is afforded the opportunity to scrutinise, to consider and to debate the details of this proposal. It is right, Taoiseach, that this will now happen. You are aware that there are legitimate concerns surrounding the ownership structure and the clinical independence of the hospital. And there's strong grounds for these concerns given the history of that relationship between church and state, which denied healthcare services to generations of women. Minister Donnelly stated this morning that he can absolutely 100% guarantee that all women's healthcare services allowable under Irish law will be provided at the new hospital. Taoiseach, these guarantees must be cast iron legal protections and not simply rhetorical assurances. In the same interview, the Health Minister referred to criticism of the ownership model as what he called a red herring. That's not a fair characterisation of what are well-founded concerns. The state proposes an investment of €800 million, possibly increasing to €1 billion when all is said and done. That's taxpayers' money, and the state should own the hospital and the ground that the hospital is built on outright. That's simple common sense. Under your proposal, we will own the building but not the land, which will remain in private ownership, and that makes absolutely no sense when the state is footing the bill. We need a publicly built maternity hospital on publicly owned land, delivering public healthcare services for women to a standard of excellence. Instead, what is proposed is a convoluted maze in which the Sisters of Charity have transferred the land to a holdings company that then leases the land to the state. It's all very messy, unnecessarily so, and it's stoking unease, Taoiseach, and worry. People ask, why on earth is this happening? Surely the best solution is for the Sisters of Charity to have gifted the land to the state and to ensure and guarantee full public ownership of the entire hospital. This would protect the state's investment and address so many of the concerns of so many who fear still that religious dogma could compromise the delivery of healthcare. Tá tispadéil náisiúnta maithreachas nua róthábhacach. Caithimid é all I gceart, chud nabh splóchas cliniciúla cinsú agus in estiach publi a cosint. Ní mór don rialtas, unéireach stát umlán a cintú den talamh bhfuil an tispadéil le tógáil. So we have to get this right, Taoiseach, and I think we have to work together to get it right. So let me put the proposition to you simply. We need to achieve full state ownership for the new hospital and the land on which the hospital is built. And this has to be done now, Taoiseach, before any contracts are signed. So will you work urgently to convince St Vincent's Health Group to gift that land to the state?
Thank you. Taoiseach.
Could I at the outset say that my only motivation here as Taoiseach is to ensure that we make a decision that provides a modern, world-class maternity and neonatal hospital and facility for the women of Ireland now and right into the future. That will allow all services legally permissible in the state now and into the future to be provided to the women of Ireland. And that is the objective and motivation that I have as Taoiseach. But I want to see it done. I don't like hanging around forever. I do believe we should get it right. But the latest phase of this co-location proposal began in 2013. It is now 2022. How long more do people want to wait? How many more years are women expected to occupy or be in a hospital that's physically not fit for purpose? Current Hollow Street, not fit for purpose. Nightingale wards. You have physical transfers of women with complications from Hollow Street to Vincent's. Not good enough anymore in the 21st century. Simply not good enough. Cork University Maternity Hospital was built and commenced during my time as Minister for Health. I sanctioned it, we got it built. Admittedly, 2 state hospitals coming together, providing state-of-the-art maternity and neonatal facilities. Nothing has happened since in terms of maternity facilities. The existing facilities of the other maternity hospitals are very, very old buildings. Collectively and politically, we have responsibilities to decide too, to make decisions. Now, I accept concerns and legitimate concerns were raised. They have been comprehensively addressed, not via rhetoric, but legal guarantees and documents which have been published. And I implore you to read them. People talk about, and the initial concern was clinical governance, operational independence, and financial independence. Those have been comprehensively addressed via the constitution of the new National Maternity Hospital, the Articles of Association, the golden share that the Minister has to ensure that the reserved powers within the Constitution are implemented in terms of all legally permissible services being made available and being provided. It's now moved on to ownership. I would respectfully suggest that leasing land in a building for 300 years at a tenner a year, that is ownership. By any stretch of the imagination, that is public ownership by any historic or objective analysis. 300-year lease at a tenner a year. That's what the agreement says. And to me, that is public ownership. And I would ask people to read the documentation, to go through the operating license, for example, that the HSE will be giving to the new National Maternity Hospital. Very, very clear in respect of what obligations are there on behalf of the hospital to deliver all services to the women of Ireland and to make sure that we have better outcomes. Because remember, all of this happened because expertise 20, 25 years ago was saying to us, we need to co-locate. We need to co-locate for the safety of women and better outcomes in terms of deliveries. And that was the original motivation behind co-location. That's why it happened in Cork. This was to happen many years ago. Mulvey agreement was published, I think, in 2016. The current agreements now are an advancement, significant advancement on Mulvey in terms of the golden share, but also in terms of public interest directors. It's now 3 appointed by the Minister, 3 from the National Maternity Hospital, and 3 from St. Vincent's Hospital Group. So I would ask that people would read the documentation and accept that there are legal guarantees now provided there that are cast iron.
McDonald.
And undoubtedly, Taoiseach, all of that documentation which has been published, and I welcome that fact, will be studied and scrutinised and considered very, very carefully. But I've raised with you the issue of ownership of the land, and you have responded by reminding us that we are looking at a 300-year lease at the cost of €10 a year. So that begs the question, why lease on those terms, and why did the Sisters of Charity just not make a clean transaction of things and gift the land to the state? That would copper fasten and clarify the absolute public ownership of the facility. It would give the reassurances that are necessary, not for a small minority, but for wider public opinion in terms of the governance, the independence, and so on of the hospital. And by the way, I accept your bona fides, Taoiseach, in wishing to see this project advance. And can I tell you, as somebody who availed of maternity services in my time in this state, I can tell you we all have a vested interest in seeing that advance. So I'm not challenging that for a moment. I'm raising this issue of ownership because it is a matter of genuine concern. So I put it to you again, that we work together to move from this convoluted leasing arrangement to simply a gifting of this land to the state, so we have a public first-class centre of excellence for women, publicly built on public land.
Thank you very much, Taoiseach.
What is your difficulty with a lease of 300 years, essentially, for 10 euros a year? Isn't that essentially a gift of the land? Essentially? Of course it is. No, sorry, it is. To all intents and purposes, 300 years at a tenor. And what is the issue then? I mean, operationally, financially, clinically independent. All of the legal documentation underpins a variety of documents, legal documents, from the constitution of the hospital, right across to the operating license that the HSE will be giving to or providing to the hospital, obliging it to provide all of the services legally permissible in the state. And in my view, and by the way, there is also within those legal guarantees a clear obligation, no religious ethos, to have any hand, act or part in the operations of the hospital, delivery of services, likewise in terms of ethnic or other distinctions. And it's as clear as it could be. And I think there is an onus and an obligation as well to weigh this up on the balance. Because, as I said, this latest phase began in 2013. The current government had the Mulvey Agreement, which the previous government agreed with, and I think a lot of people in the House did also, which also provided guarantees. And my answer is, really I think you need to come up with a more substantial argument than the one you've come up with. Because I'm not clear at all
Time is up,
in terms of what you were saying in your presentation, both your first presentation, no, you weren't actually clear. You were not clear in terms of what you're actually quibbling with. Are you saying, for example, services will not be provided?
No, I've raised the issue of the ownership of the land, Count Corla. I would have thought that was abundantly clear.
Does not. Deputy Ivana Bacik, please.